He's carrying you.
Shalom and welcome to this month's Jerusalem Dispatch ICEJ UK. This is the pro-Israel Christian ministry that brings you a closer connection to Israel and the Jewish people through the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem UK. And in this month's programme we shall be unpacking the Jewish festival of Purim and asking, what does this festival teach us about the rise of Jew hatred today? And in this programme I'm joined by Len Grates, the Operations Director for the Ministry of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem UK, together with Sam Henry, who is the Midlands Coordinator for ICEJ UK. So warm welcome to the programme, guys.
Great to be with you, Simon.
Great to be with you, Simon.
And great to see you back on the programme. Just share with us and with our viewers an update on the important and crucial work being carried out by the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem UK in really standing with Israel and the Jewish people at this critical time.
Yeah, well, it's one of the great privileges of my life to have been involved with the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, to stand with God's purposes for the Jewish people and Israel. And if I can just add it there, that there's never been such an important time for Christians to do that, when Israel and the Jewish people have been under so much pressure. And we've been out there trying to influence the church by teachings and conferences. One of our major functions is fundraising to put into some of the great projects that's going on in Israel, particularly after what happened in October the 7th, just over 2 years ago. We're helping to rebuild some of the kibbutzes that were destroyed. We're providing help for trauma. The whole area of an aftermath of this past couple of years is one big challenge, and we're trying to play our little part in addressing that.
Excellent. Well, it's a big part, so thank you. And Sam, great to see you back on the programme. It's about a year ago since you were last on, so it's definitely becoming an annual event. Share with us what you are doing and what the Lord is doing, particularly in the Midlands area, which is like central England, and how, for example, many other churches are joining the ministry of ICEJ UK. They're preaching and teaching about Israel, and also you have an exciting conference coming up in July.
Yes, thank you, Simon, for that. I'm really pleased to share that God's really doing. I'm really pleased that God is doing the work in the Midlands, and 3 points I would mention is our growing awareness. So reaching out to more pastors and churches in the Midlands. Secondly, education and prayer mobilization. Those are important things, Simon, because there's a scripture that says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So we want to strengthen churches by a biblical understanding of how important Israel is to our theology. And also prayer equally. We meet every 6 weeks and we pray for Israel, and we also pray for the church to get a greater awareness of Israel. And then thirdly, we want to strengthen the relationships between pastors and churches. I'm pleased that we are planning our first symposium later this year, and there'll be more news about that coming along. That's exciting for me, really, because we're trying to bring initially with some of the black majority churches, so New Testament Church of God, the Church of God of Prophecy, and the Apostolic Churches. We're bringing 3 of them together initially, and the topic will be As God Forgot in Israel. So it's going to be exciting, yeah.
Amazing. And of course, Pastor Simon and Pastor Adam are doing a great job in the Midlands as well.
Oh yes, certainly. Simon and Adam, they went to Envision. I'll talk a bit more about Envision. But since they've been to the Envision in 2023, it's just completely changed their lives. And they're a real asset to the ICEJ.
Amazing. And Len, we're talking about Envision. So share with us how the Envision conference for pastors and leaders that took place, according to my notes here in Jerusalem, from February the 2nd to the 6th, went in terms of really unpacking for pastors a biblical understanding, but also an understanding of where Israel is politically, socially, and also strategically as well. particularly?
Yeah,
these times?
can I just first of all say about Sam? Sam's doing a fantastic job along with Adam and Simon in the Midlands, and building bridges. Fantastic work they're doing. With regards to Envision, Envision has been our annual leadership conference, which has been going on for about 20 years now. It's open to leaders, and the aim is to get people of influence there in leadership, and a number of folk from the UK. I think we've sponsored over 30 leaders over the past years to go, including yourself, I believe. So it's a way of trying to encourage those who are searching for more on the whole truth of Israel and the Jewish people. Often people who know there's something happening, but they haven't put the jigsaw together. And really the Envision conference helps people put that jigsaw together. It's had a dramatic effect on so many leaders. Just this year too, we sponsored 5 leaders, and Jonathan Croft, one of our directors, led that. And he said it was one of the best things that he's been on for many years. And all these 5 leaders were impacted. In fact, today, right now, as we're recording this program, there is a meeting in Northern Ireland between our Northern Ireland director and the Elim churches, leaders from Elim Church. One of the directors of the Elim organization over there was sponsored. He was so fired up, and within 3 weeks he's gathering all the leaders together in his denomination to share about the importance of supporting Israel and the Jewish people.
So
it's just one thing that's happened.
I have to mention Brian Sylvester's a great guy, and he's doing a great job in Northern
absolutely.
Ireland. And I love speaking over there. It's very special. And Sam, you went to the Envision conference a couple of years ago, and as a pastor, I know that you're not in that role as a pastor at the moment, but when you were in that role as a pastor, share with us how you grew in your faith with the Lord, but also grew biblically through being part of Envision.
Absolutely. So the Envision conference, and I will definitely recommend, pastors, if you're a pastor and you can hear me, really make it your duty to visit Envision. It's an annual gathering of global gathering of pastors around the world in Jerusalem. So when I went in January 2023, Pastor Adam Simon was there, also Pastor Gilroy from Mount Shiloh Church. And I remember saying to Gilroy, and his church is called Mount Shiloh Apostolic Church in East Park, Wolverhampton. I said, Gilroy, one day we will go to Shiloh in Israel. And we did. And I must say that the impact of actually going to the land. So there's something about reading the Bible, Simon, but then actually going to the land of the Bible, actually visiting the land. And there is something special about going to Israel. I felt that in Jerusalem, and I would say to anybody, it will strengthen your belief. More than that, it will strengthen your conviction that the Bible is still today accurate. Going to the land really will solidify your own convictions that the Bible is indeed real.
Amen. Let's have a look now at some of the highlights from the Envision Conference for Pastors and Leaders 2026, and this took place in Jerusalem in February of this year.
History is written. We stand on the side of Israel, and Israel stand on the side of those who are living Christian. This is a great thing. We should live this in the future, and God will bless you for this. God has a lot of blessing for Christians and for churches. Of course, the grace is huge, but there is a special blessing waiting for a pastor who was not on fire for Israel. And when I understand this on the Western Wall, I start to pray for Israel. I start to preach in my church about Israel. I tell you, with this, new blessings come in my church. And pastors should know this. There is a blessing waiting from God.
Into the synagogue and sat. This was Paul's pattern to those who share scriptures, the covenants, the promises, the victories. This is not merely a strategy, it is theology. It reflects the pattern of Jesus himself. But notice how he goes. He doesn't go outside the doors critiquing. He doesn't burst in and demand a platform. He doesn't bring unwanted attention to himself. he sits down. My friends, this is called the ministry of presence. Before Paul ever opens his mouth, he's already ministering more than anything else. The ministry of presence does more than we could ever imagine.
The calling that God placed upon the seed of Abraham, the Jewish people, is irrevocable. The calling and the gift, there is something special about the Jewish people. Jesus clearly expected that Jerusalem and the Jewish people will have a role in the future. The New Testament is actually clearly speaking about the continued validity of God's promises given to the Jewish people.
We need to be convicted people. We need to speak with conviction. Thirdly, courage. Joshua 1:8 tells us to be strong and courageous. You can have courage but not conviction, but you can't have conviction and not have courage. Courage, I believe, is rooted in deep conviction. It's important for us to be courageous in speaking up, standing up, irrespective of whether our church gets bigger or gets smaller. And what matters is that we're faithful to proclaim the word to our generation.
God is going to have to humble everyone, every nation, and every ruler until every enemy is under his feet. If Israel is no longer important to God, if they fulfilled their mission, why is the devil still trying to destroy Israel even after the man-child is caught up to heaven, the ascension of Jesus? Why is he still trying to destroy Israel? Because this nation still matters to God.
When the church says we must not choose sides, it feels like abandonment. Jesus rejects this type of neutrality. Whosoever is not with me is against me.
Before I became a believer, that I was an enemy. I was told to hate Jews and Israel, but the King of the Jews came into my life and changed my life. And I said, okay, Jesus, if it's true, come into my life, that you are the Son of God and you died for me and you rose from the dead. And the moment I said that, the heat went through my left hand, it went through all my body. I started shaking, I started crying. I felt this love I had never felt before in my life. I felt this joy, this peace. I was about to fly.
The coming of the Lord in his supper now to anticipate his second coming is an experience of the already and not yet. When we enjoy his coming now, but we're exhorted to guard our lives in watchfulness, faithfully for his final coming.
In the midst of all of this violence, all these regimes, all these great and big nations, they scream, they shout, they try to destroy, and they cannot do nothing. But it's not about Israel. It's not about our army. It's not about our government. It's about God of Israel.
I will be a temple of few for you. Jesus says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst. We are in the 4th day. It's time for the restoration of Israel. Time has come for us to worship our God, to celebrate him.
They were some of the highlights of the Envision conference that took place in Jerusalem in February for Christian pastors and leaders. And if you want to go, get in touch with the ministry and you could be there in 2027. Len, just give us an update. We're rapidly moving into spring, and I think for all of us, spring can't come sooner enough. But share with us how the ministry is preparing a whole series of conferences heading into the spring and then into the summer as well.
Yeah, over the last few years, we've moved away from having just 1 or 2 conferences every year, expecting people to come to us. And we've taken the step of trying to go out to the people into the regions. So we're planning this year regional conferences in the Northwest, in the Midlands, in London, in the East, on the South Coast, Southampton, as well as in Glasgow and Edinburgh this year. And a number of other events as well, music events, training events. So we've got a fairly packed program. We're just finalizing the details of that. And if anyone's interested, keep your eyes on our website, ICEJ.uk. All the details will be there. But we want to encourage people to come along. This is where it's happening right now. Keeping our eyes.
And it's an up and coming conference in Belfast as well, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Vice President.
Northern Ireland and the UK branch have merged. Not that they weren't different from us; they were UK, but we're now working much closer together.
Excellent. And Sam, for our viewers watching, share with us how important it is that they get involved with Israel in a practical way and in a theological way, and how does the ministry of ICEJ UK provide that?
Absolutely. So Simon, you know, the word of God says in Psalm 122, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So I would say, number one, pray intentionally. And I would encourage churches and individual Christians, you know, really make it now a part of your duty to pray for Israel. Israel's in the news almost every day. And that's not an accident. You know, we know that we're in the end times, and Israel and your salvation, your theology really does depend a lot on how you view Israel. Secondly, I would say learn and educate. Len's already mentioned about our conferences. Come and attend our conferences. Sign on, ICEJ.UK. And then thirdly, give and volunteer. So ICEJ, I would say what I've been impressed is the amount of humanitarian aid that goes into Israel. Think of the bomb shelters. You know, we know a lot of our budget is spent a lot on things like bomb shelters. So we give and we support a lot of the things that are going on the ground in Israel. That's important. So I would say definitely there's so much more that I could say about the work and the importance of Christians standing with Israel today. Thank you.
Excellent. And Len, give us your thoughts, particularly as the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reached out to the Christian community worldwide in light of the horrific statements made by the social media influencer Tucker Carlson, together with the religious leaders in Jerusalem who have actually condemned Christian Zionism.
Unfortunately, Tucker Carlson, who I believe is a sincere Christian, you know, and we've always got to be careful not to criticize our brothers or sisters in Christ. But he does appear to have an agenda of undermining churches and Christian support for Israel. I think he's stuck in a replacement theology rut and is influenced by other forces that are directing his thinking. He seems to have a very strong preconceived idea that Israel and America are in some sort of mutual agreement, which goes beyond what really is the truth. And you know, it's very concerning because he has a huge audience and a huge following, and we need to pray that these social influences, of which there are a number, will have an awakening, especially the Christian ones, and see what the Bible really does say. You know, Mike Huckabee, when he was being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, was very strong, very direct, and very biblical. And Tucker seemed to have a bit of a problem with that.
Absolutely. So let's have a look now at, this is the Prime Minister's spokesman, David Menzer, speaking about how the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is reaching out to Christian supporters of Israel, but also to tell the truth of the plight of Christians living in Israel today. Take a look.
Well, I can tell you from first-hand evidence that the Prime Minister is a huge supporter of Christians in Israel. He believes that it's very, very important, and the facts speak for themselves, really, because while there are people out there which are trying to talk down the freedom of Christians to practice their religion in our country, in this land of Israel, the facts speak for themselves. And the Prime Minister says this all the time. He says that the Christian numbers in Israel have grown. In fact, this country, Israel, is the only country in hundreds of miles in any direction, certainly anywhere in the Middle East, where the actual numbers of Christians practicing their religion freely in this country has grown. You know, in 1948, when this country was created, although obviously we've got a 3,000-year link to this land, there are only 34,000 Christians in Israel. Today, there are 188,000 Christians. That is a five-fold increase, So we're the only Middle Eastern country where the Christian community is growing. It's extremely important to this Prime Minister. And he says it very, very clearly across this region, whether in Lebanon, which previously had a proud Christian heritage, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, Christian populations are shrinking dramatically, and Israel is the regional exception. It's the only country where they're increasing, where Christians have full and equal citizenship under Israeli law. You know, Simon, here in Israel, Christians vote, they serve in the Knesset, they serve on the Supreme Court, they serve in our defense forces, they have equal legal status. There is no second-class citizenship here in Israel. And Christian Arabs in Israel are actually, a lot of people don't know this, Simon, they're amongst the most educated groups in this country. They take education extremely seriously, as of course does the Jewish community. They're amongst the highest in their matriculation results. They have a very strong university presence. It's above the average, actually, above the national average in their socioeconomic indicators. So these are the facts. And Israeli Christian leaders say this very openly. For instance, I can give you an example. We have an ambassador here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His name is George Deek. He just until a few weeks ago served as Israel's ambassador to Azerbaijan, a very important regional partner for Israel. Now, he is an Israeli Arab Christian, an Israeli Arab Christian diplomat, George Deek, and he has warned very clearly that Christians across the Middle East have dropped from roughly 20% of the regional population about a century ago to now only 4%. So Israel is extremely proud of the fact that we protect Christian holy sites by law. I don't know if you followed the recent visit of J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States. He spoke about this fact, and because he saw it for himself. Although he hasn't visited this country, he's only been here twice, he visited the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And the only time when all religions have been freed, especially the Christians, to visit their holy sites in freedom has been since Israel reunited the city of Jerusalem. So that means that in this country, we have free access to global pilgrims, and the Prime Minister says it much better than I could. He says, come and visit, and you will see for yourself. You will see, of course, the sites where Jesus walked, but you will also see the welcome which you'll get from the Israeli people.
That was David Menzer, the Israeli Prime Minister's spokesman, speaking from Jerusalem. And you can see the entire episode on Beyond the Gates of Jerusalem on the Video Demand website of Revelation TV and the Revelation TV's YouTube channel as well, if you want to see the full insight into that one. But I mean, it was so interesting because what David Menzer was saying, and this is what the Prime Minister of Israel is mentioning, how important it is that Christians go and visit Israel to experience that warmth of Israeli hospitality, of course, good weather, good food as well, but seeing the biblical sites as well. Show us, Sam, the importance of visiting Israel at this time and showing that love and solidarity to the Israeli people, both Jews and Arabs.
Yes, Simon. Presence matters, Simon. You know, Christians actually visiting the land is so important. You know, it sends a powerful message. When you go to the land of Israel, it sends a powerful message that you believe that God is still the God of Israel. And our faith, everything that we believe in, even our economy can support. You know, tourism is so important to the Israel economy. And by going there, you're actually supporting the development of that nation. I'll say secondly, spiritual enrichment. So going there is going to strengthen your belief that God is still, from Genesis to Revelation, everything that we believe in, not just spiritually, but the land itself. I was so amazed when I went to Israel, visited one of the universities to see the technology in Israel. It's just amazing, Simon. Our mobile phones that we have, that technology, where did it come from? It came from Israel. So we better, you know, really get on board with that because there's so much to learn from that land.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Len, on to slightly more serious matters now. The Community Security Trust, who provide protection for the Jewish community in the UK, They also write academic reports, and they liaise with the British government regarding how the British government can implement strategies and policy ideas to confront Jew hatred in this country. Last month produced their annual report into recorded instances of anti-Semitism for 2025, and shockingly the statistics reveal that last year, 2025, was the second highest on record, only second to 2023 after the horrors of October the 7th. What does this tell us about the state of our nation and the state of our societies in today, where Jew hatred has literally become a pandemic?
Yeah, I did read most of the report, Simon, and it was quite shocking, really. A number of things. There were 170 physical assaults on Jews last year, and over 3,000 incidents of abusive behaviour that were quite offensive. And the Jews are back to where they were in 1939 here in the UK, which is scary indeed. But one of the most concerning things I read in the report was how that many of these people are basing their particularly the Western anti-Semites on what Martin Luther wrote. It's even quoted in the report. In his book, The Jews and Their Lies, and the 7 things that Martin Luther suggested that Christians did to Jews. And this is being used as an excuse, and it's in the report. What a shocking thing that a Jewish report quoting one of so-called Christians' greatest theologians, and I just couldn't get my head around that. I thought, wow, this is just so shameful. But it is concerning to see that rise. A lot of that is coming from the Muslim community, but nevertheless, there's something stirring in the British, particularly young Brits, who are being very influenced by online content, social media, and it's sad to see that. And it's certainly for us Christians has got to be a major point of prayer and activity. We've got to stand alongside the Jewish people and say, listen, you're not alone.
Absolutely, and you've done that very well by attending the Holocaust memorial events that takes place each year. And Sam, I'm just going to quote some of the reports here from the Community Security Trust.
Yeah.
So the organisation's annual figures also show that last year was the first time there were at least 200 anti-Semitic instances each calendar month, and how some 3,700 anti-Jewish hate instances took place across the country last year. And that is just the recorded instances. So if you imagine how much the unrecorded or unreported instances of Jew hatred in the country, we're talking much higher figures. Share with us how the small but significant Jewish community in the West Midlands is feeling amongst this pandemic of Jew hatred and that in the Midlands.
Yeah, so Simon, just for general knowledge, the population of the Jewish community in Birmingham is 1,500, yeah? And so that's a very insignificant percentage, but I was pleased that we met with them recently. The Jewish Friends of Israel came to visit us, and there is real fear among the Jewish community, fear of what they see in the media. The recent, you've heard, Simon, the recent incident, the Maccabee incident in Birmingham, where they were not allowed to the match, the Aston Villa match.
Yeah, well, this is the football team.
Yeah. So where did that come
Tel
from?
Aviv, yeah.
That actually came from the fact that there's a strong, I would say Muslim Islam influence in the Birmingham City Council, and that has been reflected, and it's been widely reported on the undue influence on the Birmingham local council. Now, I would say definitely that we need to take an objective view, stand back, and realise that Birmingham is it's a very diverse community, and the Jewish community they need to feel valued. We need to value them, and we, I would say definitely the Christian community in Birmingham and around the country should make a strong vocal opinion to our local councillors, saying that, look, let us treat all sections of society equally and not use favouritism to just one section. That is what we need in Birmingham and across our country. But the good news is that we are, the Jewish community are very resilient. Now they are now approaching Christians, asking for our help. That's amazing, Simon, to see that the Jews are now coming to us, Christians, and asking for help. What will our response be? And I'm really pleased that we are showing them love and practical support.
Amen. That's a great report. Thank you, Sam. Yeah. And Len, one disturbing aspect, or probably the most disturbing aspect of the CST's annual report into anti-Semitic instances for 2025 is the fact that we've seen over the last couple of years this hatred emerge, whether it's on social media or physically. Attacks on Jewish people has now resulted in the loss of life, the murder of two Jewish worshippers at the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester by an Islamist terrorist on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. Show us how, for example, the government and our society and our media need to take more responsibility to stop these attacks, which are now becoming life-threatening for our Jewish community.
I think that the majority of the government and the police forces in our country are very afraid of the Muslim community because they know that if they try to police them in these areas, that they'll only react. They won't just sort of take their advice kindly. They'll be very much anti. And we've seen that. Unfortunately, the Islamic community, the majority of the Islam, not everyone, but the majority tend to allow their hatred of the Jews come to the surface when these things happen. We saw it on October the 7th when there was a peak of anti-Semitism, October 2023 that is, as a result of what Hamas did in Israel. There was a spike of Islamic hatred in our country and around the world. Same thing happened on 9/11 when the Islamic people around the world celebrated what was happening. And there's a clash of worlds here. There's a clash of religions. There's a clash of evil spirits going on here that we as Christians really need to be aware of and to be praying into. We're not fighting flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. So, we've got to look through that lens, not just through political lens and an anti or pro lens, but certainly let's be aware that there's been a release of spiritual forces that is aggravating various communities at this time.
No, absolutely. And Sam, according to the Community Security Trust's annual report, there were some 3,700 instances that were deemed not worthy to be followed up by the police in terms of recording anti-Semitic instances. So if you combine that figure with the recorded incidents, we're heading into probably 7,000 instances in this country, knowing the Jewish community is small. I think it's between 250,000 or 260,000 across the UK. It's a very small community. And yet this community feels very scared. It feels very, very vulnerable. Share with us how, for example, Christians need to show that love and support to the Jewish community, particularly this time. And when they see reports like the CST reports, it doesn't give them that much hope or encouragement that they've got a future in this country.
Absolutely. So, Simon, practically, I would say to any Christian church, we tend to forget our faith is a Judeo-Christian faith. The roots of our faith are inextricably linked to the Jewish people. Jesus himself says, salvation is of the Jews. And I will say to the Christian community, now is our time to stand up. Just like Esther, who at the time when she was needed, she stood up for her people. We also now need to stand up for the Jewish people. And I will say practically, talk to your councillors, write into your MPs, and express your love and support, not just for the Jewish people, but for your faith, that you as a Christian believe strongly that we need to stand with the Jewish people. They're very much, in terms of percentage, they're very, a small percentage. Should we not stand with them, Simon? Yes, we should. Offer, build that relationship with the Jewish community. Reach out to them. They need our help more than ever before.
Absolutely. So the other section of this program we're discussing, Len, is the biblical festival of Purim. And of course, this tells of the Jewish story of how the evil Haman, during the time of the ancient Persian Empire, wanted to eradicate the Jewish people. So again, this is another biblical story as it relates to evil men wanting to destroy the people of God. So share with us your thoughts on this very significant biblical festival known as Purim, where the Jewish people dress up in fancy dress and it's carnival with fancy food. It's a joyful celebration, but there's also a darker meaning behind this festival.
Yes, well, in the story we see that a King Ahasuerus, has a change of wife, Queen Vashti, who was basically sacked because she didn't play the part very well, and Queen Esther steps up and is chosen to be the queen. And what an appointment that was in God's purposes. And most people know the story very quickly. It's a story about love and hatred. Esther with a love for her people who kept it quiet, and a hatred of Haman for those people who wanted to destroy them. And Queen Esther was in the background. She never shouted out. But when the time came, she knew what to do. And I think it's a wonderful story that speaks of God's sovereign power that can't be seen, because we don't read of the name of God in the book at all. It's the only book, I think, in the Bible where the name of God is not mentioned. But God's fingerprint is all across it.
Absolutely.
And he is working sovereignly behind the scenes. And but he works out his purposes through the Jewish people. And I think we've got to recognize that in our day, and that God is still working out the Abrahamic promise, to be a blessing to the nations, quietly, behind the scenes, sovereignly, through the Jewish people. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. That is relevant as much today as it was when it was first spoken to Abraham. And so, it's an exciting story that God wins, even though we don't see him at work in name, but behind the scenes, he is orchestrating everything.
Absolutely, it's incredible, that is. And Sam, I mean, one of the key aspects of this one, which is overlooked by many biblical scholars and others, is the very prominent role played by Mordecai, the cousin of Queen Esther, in the fact that Mordecai gives one of those arousing historical speeches that changed the course of history. In which he says the following: "Who knows whether you have come into the kingdom for such a time as this, when the Jewish people were on the verge of being annihilated by the evil Haman." So again, show us how speeches can have a huge impact and change the course of history, so that we can be proactive in strengthening our faith and our cause.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Simon. I actually did a bit of research on Mordecai. And what I found out, Simon, was quite amazing, actually, that Mordecai was actually related to King Saul. And that where Saul had failed to kill the Agagites, who Haman came from. So Haman was related to the Agagites. And Saul had failed when God had told him to kill them and to destroy everything. I believe that Mordecai, realizing the significance of what Saul's ancestors didn't do, wanted to make sure that, look, we will not fail, we will do exactly, and God raised him up to be that critical voice. Again, he was a father figure to Esther, her uncle, and she trusts, so there was trust built. She trusted his word, he gave that word, and it changed again the course of history.
Amazing. And today, isn't it, that the likes of Mordecai and Queen Esther had to face the Prince of Persia, and again, Israel again is facing the Prince of Persia today in the form of the Islamic Republic of Iran, who for the past 47 years have made it their #1 foreign policy objective to destroy the nation of Israel. So share with us how the Jewish people live despite the rise of evil empires evil dictators, God has his say because history is his story.
Yeah, well, as you say, history is his story. He is the sovereign king of the universe, and the Jews pray that almost, well, every day, every prayer begins with that. But isn't it interesting that we're living in a time when Iran is in the news every day, and there's a possibility there could be war any time. Now we're expecting it. We don't know whether it's going to happen. But it's in the same region, it's in the same area. You know, the story of Esther took place in Persia, in Elam, and Susa was the capital then for a number of hundred years. Susa, which was in the southern part of modern-day Iran, southwest of Tehran. And isn't it interesting that God has made a promise to the people of Elam, Persia. In Jeremiah chapter 49, he says, I'm going to set my throne up in Elam. Now, the only other place he's prepared to set his throne is in Jerusalem. So it appears that God has some wonderful plan for the Persian people. And we need to be aware of that. And of course, the other important point is that this attempt at a Holocaust through Haman in the story of Esther is repeated today. You know, that the Iranians want to wipe Israel off from the river to the sea. And again, just to add one other thing, that isn't it interesting too, that who was the spirit that Daniel fought? You know, he was fighting there was a power battle going on against the Prince of Persia, and there seems to be a special, strong spiritual power there that we as Christians need to be praying into.
Absolutely. So let's have a look now at the Vice President of ICEJ in Jerusalem, David Parsons, talking together with Rabbi Shmuel Bauman from Life Shields, talking about this important biblical festival that marks Purim.
It's a 2-day holiday, and they call it Purim Shushan.
Right. So when it's celebrated in Jerusalem, okay, then it's going to be called Shushan Purim, which is the day after Purim is celebrated. And that really reminds us that, you know, and I encourage everybody, if you haven't read, right. So when it's celebrated in Jerusalem, okay, then it's going to be called Shushan Purim, which is the day after Purim is celebrated. And that really reminds us that, you know, and I encourage everybody, if you haven't read the scroll of Esther, if you haven't read the book of Esther, read it. If you've read the book of Esther, read it again. I mean, I've read it many times. I've scribed the scroll of Esther. Actually gave it as a gift to my father, and it was a beautiful experience. And even while writing the scroll of Esther, even though I've studied it many times, just by going through it again, new insights, new awarenesses. So I highly encourage. But one of the things that we're going to find when we read the scroll of Esther at the end is that the battle, if you will, against those who would kill the Jewish people continued an extra day, exactly, into a second day in the walled city of Shushan, okay, which is in present day
Iran,
Iraq, yeah, exactly. Was it Iran? Yeah, and so as a kind of as a nod to that, we have Shushan Purim in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
That means, by the way, if you want to go and celebrate Purim 2 days in a row, you do the first day outside of Jerusalem, and then you can go into Jerusalem on the next day and celebrate it again. So you're just going to be in Purim for like 2 days.
And Shmuel, as you go through the Hebrew calendar each year, of course, you got Passover in the spring, Shavuot or Pentecost, then the fall holidays, and these are all given to Moses. You have 2 main holidays, though, in the sort of winter months that are, they're in the biblical text in a way. They celebrate events in the biblical text, Hanukkah and Purim. And always remember Hanukkah, the kids are having fun. It's 8 days lighting the Hanukkah, and the kids get presents and all. But it's a holiday that marks an attempt to wipe out the Jewish faith. Whereas Purim, you're celebrating the victory over an attempt to wipe out the Jewish people. That's the
that's extremely well put, and I think that you've really brought it to the core idea of the difference between Hanukkah and Purim, two holidays that are not biblical festivals. As you said, the other festivals are going to be a pilgrimage or an aliyah, and they're going to be people are going to come up to the temple, whether it's going to be for Passover, Shavuot, or Sukkot. Hanukkah and Purim, you're not going to find them in the 5 books of Moses. You're not going to find them there. You're going to find reference to the Purim event in the book of the prophets. Okay, that's going to exist in what's called Tanakh. Okay, it's going to sit there in the book of Esther, which is part of the canon of Tanakh. Hanukkah, not at all. Okay, but what's going to be interesting is that later on, it's going to become part of our tradition, what we call our rabbinic tradition. Okay, and we're going to begin celebrating Purim not as a biblical festival, but in a sense as a rabbinic or as a traditional holiday. It's now become entrenched in something that we do, obviously. Hanukkah, which we just celebrated, I guess, comes up this year, the end of December. That's about crushing the Jewish faith. That was about saying you can't worship God. Purim is about, let's be very, very clear. Purim is about a Holocaust. Purim is about the genocide of the Jewish people that is going to take place widespread in the entire world as it was known 2,500 years ago.
So that was the great Rabbi Shmuel Bauman talking about the biblical festival known as Purim. And Sam, what was interesting as well, that many biblical theologians who say that the book of Esther should not be in the Bible because it doesn't talk about God and God is not mentioned. But of course we know that Mordecai, we know that had sackcloth and ashes and he was mourning when he actually learnt of this royal decree that would annihilate the Jewish people throughout the entire Persian kingdom, the most powerful world empire at the time. We know that Queen Esther also participated in a fast to seek God's help, but God is not mentioned. So share with us the hidden story of God's presence moving behind the scenes, but he isn't actually mentioned by name in the book of Esther, and the significance of that.
Absolutely. I think the most incredible thing for me, Simon, was the fact that Esther called for a 3-day fast, and that all of the Jews responded. To get all of the Jews to respond to that, no food or no, for 3 days, that you can see the hand of God in that alone, mate. Yeah. So I use the term, God was an unseen guest throughout the book. You can't read the book of Esther and not see the hand of God, the miraculous turn of events. Look at Haman. Let me give you another example. So the king realized that somebody had done a great deed and asked, who was this man? What should the reward be? Now Haman thought it was going to be him that received the accolade. I'm the one that the king wants to specially recognize. Could you imagine his dismay when he found that it was Mordecai who had saved the king, and he was the one that was applauded? Mordecai. So that to me was the amazing unseen hand of God in saying to Mordecai, remember what he said to Abram, all those who bless you I will bless. That was an ancient covenant promise of God seen through the life of Mordecai. Wow.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a typically Jewish story, but there is that great sense of humour, Len, in the story of Esther, as Sam rightly points out, by the fact that this was a huge humiliation for Haman, who the King Ashurth wanted to glorify Mordecai because he saved him from a coup, and therefore had him parade around the whole city of Shushan and stuff as well. The sheer look on Haman's face must have been horrific. And then the fact that he planned gallows for Mordecai to hang on, he himself and his sons were hung there as well. So share with us that kind of dark sense of humour that's in this book as well.
Well, you know, it's typically Jewish, if I can say that. They have a good sense of humour, the Jewish people. But you know, as Sam was saying, that you know, you see God's hand in this, and God, it's almost like a puppet show. You know, you think it's going to happen like this, or it's going to happen like that, and you can imagine the you know, Haman saying, "Oh yes, he's evil," and the audience saying, "Oh no, he isn't. Oh yes, he is. Oh no," and then God pulls out this amazing finality. You know, that Haman is the baddie. Now, of course, I'm sort of simplifying it here, but it was a very serious event. But nevertheless, it's just lovely to see that we can trust God, even if we don't sort of know him by name, we can trust him to fulfill his eternal purposes.
Amen to that. And if you are at a synagogue, when the name Haman is mentioned, there's always boos and hissing. Having participated that is quite fun. So it is almost like pantomime. Can you just unpack some of the important projects, particularly aid projects, as they relate to volunteers, Len, and how our viewers watching this program, if they want to go and help Israel, they can by being the hands and feet for the Israeli people, helping them you know, with produce on the farms, on the kibbutzes, helping them in the factories, and showing that love in a very practical and loving way.
Yeah, well, since October the 7th, 2023, we've upgraded our volunteer program and you know, enlarged it quite considerably. And there's amazing opportunities for anyone who wants to go out there, from simple things like packing food boxes to going to visit IDF soldiers on their base just to be a human touch, visiting home care, the elderly, you know, helping with harvesting and picking fruit and getting a nice suntan in the process. You know, there's endless opportunities to go out there and just be a help, a servant. And you know, it's in these practical aspects of showing love that leaves a far deeper impact than often our words. So if anyone's out there wanting to go and volunteer and help the Jewish people, help Israel, get your hands dirty, get tired, you know, you'll be exhausted at the end of the day, get in touch with the office and we can put you in touch with the right department, and it would be a life-changing experience and a great blessing to the people of Israel.
Absolutely.
Amen.
And Sam, for any of our viewers watching, how can they get involved in the ministry that is the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, UK, and play their part in, just like Mordecai did, in changing the course of history by standing with God's people, because history is his story?
Absolutely. I'm going to answer that by beginning with the first thing, and that's prayer. You know, that's a biblical command, and I'm really pleased to say that the ICEJ, since October the 7th, they have a prayer event called Rosh Kodesh. And if you get in touch, if you can hear me, if you can get in touch with the ICEJ UK, go online and just Google and find that link, Rosh Kodesh, and get involved. That's an international prayer that goes every day around the world. And please get in touch. Secondly, I would say come and attend our conferences. Len mentioned a bit earlier on that we've got conferences almost in every part of the UK this year. Please come and join us. We have a great time of worship, and we always have a guest speaker. And you know, so you'll come back refreshed, but also you'll build your relationships with people, real, genuine people from across the country who really have a heart for Israel. So I think at the least you will be refreshed yourself. Come and join us.
Well done, well said, Sam. And Len, about a minute and a half of the programme left. So just unpack for us that we can't afford to be indifferent. Just as in the time that Mordecai and Esther were living in critical times where the Jewish people are on the verge of being annihilated from Haman, a kind of modern day Hitler, as it were. And yet God raised up Mordecai, he raised up Esther for such a time as this. Share with us how we can all be called for such a time as this to stand with Israel and the Jewish people, which is a biblical command, but they can do this through a loving and practical way by supporting this great ministry that is ICEJ UK.
Yeah, this is a drum that I beat regularly, you know, how that we've got to be proactive and not just sitting around wishing and hoping. You know, it's great to pray, but we need to also put our prayers into action. So get involved with us. We can be your hands and your feet on the ground in Israel and here in the UK too, because we're in touch with the Jewish community here, working with them. So we can help express your love in a very practical and down-to-earth way that will affect people's lives. And that's what the great thing about the ICEJ is. It's impacting people's lives every day because of the generosity of people like you who give and pray for us.
So Len and Sam, thank you so much for being this month's special guest on Jerusalem Dispatch ICEJ UK for the month of March. And I just want to thank you for watching this program at home. Many of you might actually be celebrating the Jewish festival of Purim, and it's certainly worth reading the book of Esther over this time to see God's providence at work and seeing how God raised up Mordecai and Queen Esther to save the Jewish people. Again, he's calling Christians to rise up and defend Israel and the Jewish people as they face this unprecedented rise of Jew hatred. And you can do that in a very special way by supporting, praying and loving the ministry that is the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem UK. So thank you for watching Jerusalem Dispatch.
Catch the wind, he's carrying